Okay, good morning then. It's a sunny morning in Curitiba, which is great when we are just about to get on a long weekend, let's say, until next week. Some of the students were really enthusiastic about the fact that next week is a week off from university. I just have to remind you that not for this class, okay? We have regular classes next Friday. If by any chance any one of you is not in Curitiba, for those who are usually here, I mean, you can watch it the way other students do from elsewhere. But if you are around, I still think that although we try to make this in a way that it's as good or to attend remotely than it is here in class, I think that we still have a better, I mean, it's easier for us to do it here than for those. It's more challengeable for those who are doing this from a distance, and it should be a way of taking this class. If you're not, if it's not possible for you to come to classes, regular classes here. But for next week, if anyone has a problem, I know that some of you will be traveling. Just make sure that you participate from wherever you are. Okay, but I promise I'll be here. Okay. All right, the class today is on motivation. You've seen on most of the papers that we have read so far that motivation is a very important issue in collective intelligence, because differently to what happens when we are working for a company and there is someone paying us a salary at the end of the month, collective intelligence usually relies on voluntary work or work that is paid on an occasional situation, and people are usually not considering that the efforts they put into this collective intelligence, let's say, ventures as being their main activity, right? So we're relying on the help of people that are doing that in their free time, or most people, right, in their free time, or at least they're doing that as a, even if they're doing that for money, they're doing that as a second source of income or something like that. So we really have to pay attention on providing the required incentives to each one of our crowd members to make sure that they will get involved. This is very challengeable. This is something that we still don't know exactly how to do, right? Because of course this is a recent thing. We've been able to connect to these crowds so that they can get involved with these collective intelligence projects only for the last, let's say, 15 years or so, maybe a little more than that. Before anyone started talking about Web 2.0, as we talked in a previous class, there was not much of a chance of developing collective intelligence, at least to the extreme that we can do now, to the extent that we can do now, using the internet and using mobile phones or whatever other kind of connectivity people have in their hands. So motivation will be an issue for quite a while. We'll definitely have many people researching motivation for collective intelligence for the next 20 years at least. It's not something that will solve quickly, because we're still changing the ways in which we connect. A few years ago it was through a computer. Now most people are connected through a mobile phone. Maybe in 10 years from now it's a chip implanted in your forehead or something. I don't know. Hopefully not, but that could be the case. I already see advertisements of banks that very proudly show that if you wear their wrists with, you don't even have to remember your password any longer. You just go there with your sorry, how do you call that? Armbands, yeah. If you have one of those armbands around your wrist, that's enough. Well, an armband is still a little, let's say, inconvenient maybe a chip implanted in your forehead is going to be the next step when we get used to it, to the idea. You know, like as I say, we develop technologies and then we have to get used to it. I don't feel very comfortable with the idea of having an implanted chip on my forehead, but I'm sure that my kids will be much more comfortable with that after having worn the wristband. How do you call it? Wristband, yeah. For a while. It's exactly the same concept, just that one is more into you. You don't even have to take it out to have a swim at the beach, for example. So as we change the ways we connect, motivation will change. As we change the way we think about tasks that we perform in this collective intelligence efforts, motivation will change. And you see that there are, we have many reasons to collaborate. People do that. We have usually summarized that as money, love, or glory, as Malone does. It seems easy to remember, and it seems to fit most of the situations. But we'll notice that each author explores different particularities, different issues related to specific uses of collective intelligence, because some of them, for example, are more suited to using money, right? Or to use more pragmatic compensations for the time that people put into the effort. For example, whenever the task is boring, is not challenging, people do not think of it as being something that they're doing for altruism, to help others or something. If it's just a task that you're performing for a company, the logic is going to be the traditional Industrial Revolution logic, right? Pay me and I will do it, right? Mechanical Turk, for example, the Amazon solution for crowdsourcing works on that basis. You're paid a little money for simple tasks that you perform virtually from anywhere in the world. I'm not sure if it's available to anyone in the world, because they may have some restrictions on IPs and things like that, depending on local regulations and things like that. But basically, what Amazon proposes using this mechanical Turk system is that you have some free time. Are you available to do some core that is sort of probably boring, repetitive, but you do that for half an hour or so, and you'll be paid a few cents for each of your interventions. And there's people that are doing some money. It's not going to be big money, but it's maybe it's something that if someone is trying to kill the time, right, waiting for, let's say, a doctor appointment, a medical doctor appointment, and you have the time, why not, entertain yourself with something that cashes in instead of just playing a game? Mainly if they can do that, that's not what Mechanical Turk does, but in some cases, maybe if that is even turned into a game so that you do that even for free. You don't get the money because you get the fun, right? So we will probably see also some changes, as I said, not only the tasks, the technologies, but also in our mindsets. I see, and I think I've already discussed this with you, that I see, for example, that my kids' perspectives to work are much different to my own, right? When I was 20 years of age, I wished I could turn into an engineer very quickly so that I would get a job and so that I could be responsible for my own spending and not asking money for my parents to take a girlfriend to the movies, for example. That was the idea. My kids are not so concerned about that. They think that if they live at home until they're 30 or 40, that's going to be okay. And I've already told them that it's not going to be okay. It may be an alternative if life goes in an unplanned way, but that's not what I think. But they think differently. And they also think differently about a career. When we graduated, we thought, we planned everything. Not that everything happened the way we planned. Of course, life starts twisting your ways and making you go in different directions than you had planned originally. But at least we had a plan, right? Today I have the feeling that my daughter plans for contingency. She says, well, there are so many options. You know, we didn't have those many options available. There's so many options that it's better not to plan for one of them. It's better to keep a broad perspective and see where we're going, and then we move. It's a different world in which you plan differently. For example, today, in fact, anyone can, if nothing else, nothing better happens, anyone can enroll into Mechanical Turk and do a few courses there for some money and survive on that, right? So I think that changes also our perspective with respect to a career. You don't need a career to survive or to even to be successful. In fact, having a career may mean that you're not successful. To this, at least my impression of some of you guys, the way some of you guys think. When you think of someone spending the whole life in one only job, for my generation that was okay. That was not bad at all. In fact, it could prove that that person was good at what they did, and therefore they were never fired. For a generation that gets to the job already thinking of when they will be fired, because they know that they will not last in the same organization for more than 3 or 5 years, their commitment to that job, specific job, and to career is weaker, right? So these changes in our mindset will also keep, and changes that are still evolving, they will also make a difference over time on how to motivate people. I am sure that there is much more opportunity now to motivate people with glory and love for one specific reason. Companies are hiring people to do things that they don't like, that they don't feel that fulfill their needs. So people go there and work for 8 hours a day or 12 hours or even more than that for a company, and then they get home and they say, is there anything that I can do that is meaningful now? Right? And so they may do these meaningful things for love and glory, not necessarily for money. And that's a good opportunity for things to be done, right? I'm not sure if it's going to be a good opportunity for companies to make business that way directly, but it may even be a counter point to traditional industrial revolution jobs, right? The open source movement goes in that direction. We've already talked about that, I'm sure. When you see people working for Microsoft during the day and then going home and working a few extra hours to develop a project that performs exactly the same as what they were trying to do for money, and now they do it for probably even more for love than for glory, because there's not many of those involved in an open source project will actually be acknowledged for their effort in a way that you could say, well, that provided them with glory and this will turn into money afterwards, right? But it means, I think if we're not sociologists here, but if we had someone that was studying collective intelligence from a sociology or from a psychology perspective, you would see that there are other needs of the human being that were not being fulfilled by the traditional work experiences that we have in traditional companies, and someone could benefit from that. I would say that it's probably, if you want to get people involved for love, it's not going to be a project for you to get rich, right? Or at least it couldn't be a project that people will see, wow, oh, this is a project that Alexandre is performing because, yeah, he wants to get money out of it. So he wants money out of it and I will have to do it for love. Things don't match, right? But it will be a great way of engaging people in projects that improve citizenship, that provides solutions for problems that organizations, regardless of them being for-profit organizations or even government organizations are not being able to solve. Okay? So different motivations will be better suited for different tasks that we want people to perform, and this will keep changing over time, right? I hope this is, the papers that we chose for today, they're well, sort of different, in each one of them is aiming at a different kind of crowdsourcing activity, of involving the masses in doing the job. But the idea was actually to try and show that different organizations will have to use different ways of engaging people, and if we want to develop projects, collective intelligence projects, we will have to think what would motivate the people that I need to help me with this project. Okay, right. So let's see. The first project that we had for today, the first paper is not this one. It's the motivations and experiences of the on-demand mobile workforce. One of the things that you've probably realized by now is that it's very difficult to keep up with all the different name tags that we have for different things that we're discussing in collective intelligence, right? In fact, if you are doing any sort of research in collective intelligence, I think I told Carlos the other day, he's going to do a systematic literature review trying to check how collective intelligence is being used to provide citizenship, for example. And I said, okay, don't just use the keywords citizenship and collective intelligence. Citizenship is something that is very mature. If you talk about citizenship, well, most people will have an idea of what you're talking about. Collective intelligence is a term that has been coined only a few years ago. We've noticed that different authors talk about it at least in slightly different ways. Some of them don't even mention the term collective intelligence. Some of them will be talking about collective intelligence and using the term, for example, Web 2.0, or well, as Web 2.0 has been around for more than 10 years now, there are people that are saying, well, we're already talking about Web 3.0, okay? Which is, if Web 2.0 is well set, let's say, whoever talks about Web 2.0 now talks about those things that we discussed in the previous class. Talk about involving the user, talking about using the internet or whatever network we use in a way that we're not broadcasting, we are building a dialogue, we are getting people engaged, we are getting users to become co-producers of whatever we're doing. So that is all very well set for Web 2.0. If you try to study Web 3.0, you will see that different authors are claiming that it's related to different things, right? But I would say, don't just search for collective intelligence. Search for collective intelligence, Web 2.0, wisdom of the crowds, after Surowiecki's book that we've already gotten acquainted with, that we already read a few chapters. Many people think of this engagement of lots of users, lots of people to develop tasks that used to be performed, you know, in a more traditional way. Many people refer to that as wisdom of the crowds. So you will have to attempt. In fact, whenever we do any literature review and whenever we're looking for any topic, we shouldn't get attached to just one expression, because that may be leading us in a way that only reaffirms that we already know. Okay, so it's important to try and see what other people may be talking about the same phenomenon, many times from a different perspective, to a different community, and they're talking about the same thing with using different terms, using different language. One thing that we still have to build is a common language. In fact, this appears in one of the papers that we have for today. I think it's Salminen's, where's that? Yes, Salminen's Collective Intelligence in Humans, a literature review. you will see that one of the things that he says there, I don't know if we'll have time for that paper, but anyway, I think it's a little misplaced. It's not, I'm not talking directly about it right now because it's not, the focus is not necessarily on motivation. In fact, in a future class, I will probably include it together with those papers that you read for what is collective intelligence, right? But anyway, so I'm not sure if we'll be able to discuss it. I'll leave it, if we don't have time today, I will leave it behind, but I think it's a very important paper, very interesting paper. But the reason for which I'm leaving it to be the last, if we have a chance, is because it's a little, what it discusses is a little different. But anyway, what Salminen says is that we are at a risk of fragmentation in this collective intelligence field that we are trying to build, because we are in a sort of in a Babel tower, right? Each one is talking using their own terms, and many times when we do our searches on databases or academic databases, including papers and journals and so on, we miss part of the discussion because they were talking to a different audience using different terms. So we have to take care of that, and this is going to be one of the challenges that you have, Carlos, making sure that when you're talking about citizens, yeah, in your case more for e-government, and making sure that you also at least try to find which other communities are discussing this topic from different perspectives. It is a multidisciplinary topic, so there is definitely, there will be people talking about collective intelligence in several different areas, and there is a risk that they're talking to themselves. Swarm intelligence. Swarm intelligence is a little more concerned with an intelligence that is not cognitive. So we usually don't use swarm intelligence for human collective intelligence, but there are authors that do. Right? Which one? You're going to Salminen again? Yeah. Salminen. Uh-huh. Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah. He tries to use swarm intelligence because he realized that there are authors that are discussing what we are here calling collective intelligence, but they call swarm intelligence. In fact, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, he definitely uses swarm intelligence as the term. And notice that we could, if we were trying to build a taxonomy, we could say that swarm intelligence is one way of go with collective intelligence, mainly when we don't need people to think. We just need coordination, the same sort of coordination that happens with bees building a hive or with ants building their nest, right? So I'd say swarm intelligence would be, the way I think collective intelligence, it would be one type of collective intelligence that is more, and maybe something like, maybe we could say that, for example, if Amazon, in Amazon Turk, someone posts a task that just involves many people doing tasks that are not that do not involve a lot of intelligence work, it's more effort, then we could say, well, this is, they're trying to do, and mainly if it depends on coordination. Remember, swarm intelligence depends on coordination. There is a lot of collective intelligence efforts that do not depend on coordination, depend only on aggregation, for example. You are part of a swarm, yeah. Yeah, you exactly. And besides, you do that without having to think, right? You stop when you see a car coming, the crossing, and that's all part of the hive behavior, the swarm behavior. We developed that. That's in in the DNA of a driver, right? When I ride my bike to university every day, I think I always know who's a driver and who's not a driver when I'm going around Passeio Público, right? Around Passeio Público, that's one of the parks here in Curitiba, there is a track that is shared by bicycles and pedestrians. And I would expect that any human being would know that we are coded that way as drivers, that you drive on the right. So you ride on the right, you walk on the right, right? But walkers don't have that idea. And then we have to go like that, you know, trying to escape them and have to be very careful, because not everyone thinks that, well, when there's someone coming the opposite direction, I have to go right, and the other person will have to go right also. Their right is my left, and then we're not going to crash. But if we don't have that sense, which is a swarm sense, then the swarm will not operate properly, right? But anyway, this is all to say that we will still be challenged here by different authors talking about situations that are sort of the same, but using sometimes completely different terminology. In this case specifically, the authors here, Teodoro and his colleagues here, use this term on-demand mobile workforce. And then you'd say, well, okay, what is a mobile workforce? For them, and in fact, as they have been working, this is a group that has been working with this for quite a while. You'll notice that even one of the other authors that will come next cites this paper here. So they're coining the term mobile workforce as a way of involving people in collective intelligence when there is a geography issue, when mainly for physical tasks, right? Mechanical Turk, for example, is mainly focused on tasks that you can do online. If you can do it online, it doesn't matter if you are in Curitiba, in São Paulo, Rio, Tokyo, New York, whatever, the moon. If you have a connection, you are able to perform that task. But what these guys call mobile tasks are tasks that relate to someone going somewhere to perform a task. If you need to go somewhere, of course, there are other issues involved in the motivation, right? For example, I could go from Curitiba to New York to take a photograph of a picture of a street sign, but it would be costly. I would say, oh, don't worry, just pay me the ticket and I'll do it for free, you know. Just pay me the tickets to New York and I will take this picture for you. But it would be costly for whoever is trying to get me involved in that task performance, because for them, for me, it would be, yeah, I'm doing it for free. For them, it would mean paying an international airfare, right? And many times those tasks are going to be paid for whoever is paying. They're thinking of that as really as a micro task, as something that should be performed by someone living nearby. If they asked me to take pictures around Juvevé, the suburb where I live, maybe I would do it for fun. I wouldn't even charge them anything. In fact, when the other day I asked some of my undergraduate students here to go around UTFPR marking any issue related to the sidewalks that could prevent someone on a wheelchair to go around, I can't say that they went there for love, right, for their professor, but they went there they thought, well, if I say, no, I'm not going, I'll stay in class, maybe he will look at my exam, in a different way. They were very cooperative, but I was only able to engage them because I said, look, we're going to do that for half an hour. You leave here. I assigned a block for each one of them to map, or for a group of two. In Curitiba, you always have to have that concern. So someone is including the data and someone else is checking if no one is going to steal their mobile phone, right? So they went in groups of 2 or 3 and they mapped the streets around UTFPR. That's something that they could do in half an hour without much burden because they were here. If I asked them, okay, I want each one of you to go to a different suburb to do that, it would be a different story. Maybe it would be okay still if I said, oh, do a few blocks around your house, okay? But if I simply assign, okay, you are going to this suburb and you go to that other, they'll say, well, this is starting to, the task that you're demanding is starting to demand too much from me, more than I would be willing to do for love or for very little money. Okay? So in some of these mobile workforce activities, you have to think of that. Where the person is will probably tell if they're going to accept to perform a task or not, and how much. Notice how much they will charge. I'm talking about money because we still have the Industrial Revolution mindset, but how much they will charge, it could be just the amount of love or the amount of glory or whatever that is involved in that task. So, going back here to the motivations of motivations and experiences of the on-demand mobile workforce. Check, of course, the abstract. Now we are getting to real academic papers. So I hope that you will find what the objective of some of these papers is by just looking at the abstract. What is the objective of these guys? I have to say that they don't say the objective of this paper is. I think that we should even do that to make it very clear for whoever is reading what our objective is. In this case here, they say what they will be reporting, but what is the objective? They have, but do those questions appear in the abstract? No, I'm saying about the abstract, just the abstract. The motivations and experiences that drive people to perform those tests. This is what the authors want to understand. What are the motivations and experiences? It's actually here. The study reports on the motivations and experiences of individuals who regularly complete physical world tasks posted in on-demand mobile workforce marketplace. They don't define in the paper very precisely what on-demand means, right? But well, if we take that as the common sense meaning for on-demand is something that is being demanded now, right? So it's my question here is, and we would have to keep studying collective intelligence to see how other authors are doing. Are there other authors that use the term on-demand specific, and how do they use that? Is that for simple tasks? You know, this is something that is on demand now, but is that also for something very simple, or it doesn't seem to be like that because there are some complex tasks here also included, right? But this is something that has to be better understood. But anyway, we understand what they mean here. And so the objective becomes clear by seeing this. The study reports on the motivations and experiences of individuals who regularly complete physical world tasks posted in on-demand mobile workforce marketplaces. Do they say anything about the method in this abstract? What is the method that is used? Yes, it's here, right? Data collection included semi-structured interviews with members, workers of two different services. They don't define semi-structured interviews, but that for someone who's writing a dissertation or a thesis should be well understood. Semi-structured. Yeah, it's a survey. No, notice interviews. So if it's an interview, my understanding is an interview is face-to-face, or it could be electronically mediated, but it's still eyes-to-eyes, or at least it has to be synchronous, right? I wouldn't say that a survey that you send through mail or even post in one of these SurveyMonkey or even Google Forms or whatever, I would not call that an interview, right? I think an interview requires synchronicity. synchronicity. Right, yeah. So that's the here is the methods. And then I think the remaining here is already the results, right? The analysis revealed the main driver. Notice this is finally an abstract that I think pleases me, in the sense that I read the abstract, I know if I want to read the paper or not, because the objective interests me, the method seems okay. Of course, the detail will have to be presented later, but anyway, it seems that the method is suitable, and the results are somehow appealing, okay? Right, okay, what else we have here that is important about the paper? Well, they have here a definition of, a first definition of on-demand mobile tasks. We refer to the workers who complete physical work tasks as the on-demand mobile workforce, right? I wonder if someone who completed an online task would not also, or could not be also called someone participating on an on-demand online workforce, right? So the on-demand there for me seems a little loose, but anyway, as I said, each author is still, we still haven't, unfortunately, we still haven't developed the vocabulary that we need to be more precise about what we're doing, and therefore we have to explain what we're doing more often than we would probably like. If this was already a mature discipline, when we said this work is going to be about this, everyone else, at least everyone else who was part of that community, would understand what you were talking about, right? But we are still, this is not a complaint, this is actually a motivation for you who are thinking about using collective intelligence. It means there's still a lot to be done, right? We still have to, this community still has to even develop the vocabulary we need to talk to one another without having to explain everything all the time, okay? One interesting other term that appears here and may be interesting for some of the research that you are doing is microtasks. Right? What is a microtask? Basically something that does not require a lot of effort. Right? Microtasks are tasks that people will be willing to perform for little money or for no money, because it's easy for them. For little money, if it's easy but it's boring, they'll say, okay, pay me and I'll do it. If it's easy and it's enjoyable, you'll say, okay, you don't even have to pay me. I have fun playing this game. And I remember that a few months ago, my son was playing a game where he had to recognize or to acknowledge different brands, and there was the let's say the image, and then he had to say to what company that he was. For him, that was a game. For whoever thought of that game, that was an important marketing tool to assess the value of brands, or even I don't know what they were using that for, but maybe they were using that to get to those companies later and say, look, Coca-Cola, you know, only half of the people who saw your brand recognized it, and you know, 70% recognized Pepsi. Of course, that's not the case of Coca-Cola and Pepsi, but I don't know what the purpose of whoever thought of that game was, but I am quite sure that there was a purpose, and they were collecting data from people that were playing. Fancy knowing that it's a 12-year-old boy that is doing that, and then knowing that the other person that is playing the game is 25, and there's someone who's 35 or 55, and then showing brands that are aging, brands that are acknowledged by everyone, and so on and so forth. There is a lot of value even in very naive games, right? But they are micro tasks. In his case, he was doing that for fun that is maybe part of love, I don't know. Okay. Then he mentions here the Amazon Mechanical Turk that I have already talked a little bit about. Amazon Mechanical Turk is an interesting, in fact it was interesting the way it was not, in fact it was not this paper, the other paper that they actually performed their academic research by posting an assignment, a microtask, right? The microtask that they post, it's the other paper. We'll get to that later, but the idea was they wanted to know what drove people to perform the test, so they paid people to answer that. Okay? And it seems to be an effective way of researching, because they were researching people that were paid to do little tasks by paying them. So it was exactly what drove those people to do that. So they got the response they wanted. But anyway, one interesting thing that I noticed in more than one of the papers that we had to read for today is this issue here about this mention here to Mustag and Gannison's paper. They said that those authors found that a small fraction of mobile workforce platform users, who they refer to as super agents, perform more than 80% of the tasks and receive more than 80% of the total earnings. For any of you who's acquainted with Pareto's law, what he's saying here, these authors are saying here, which is also said in the other paper. Here they call them super agents. The other paper calls them power users. See, it's difficult. We still haven't decided how we're going to deal with these things. Different names for the same effect, same situation, which is basically realize that you want to involve the whole crowd, but there are people that are more, how do I say, sensible to your motivation, to your incentives. You will get, even if you try to reach everyone, you will get a percentage of those people that will be actually the ones that will do the work. Well, I don't know what our conclusion should be. It will depend on on what we're doing, right? If it doesn't matter for us if we have the involvement of everyone, or just 20% for the task to be accomplished, maybe we'll say, okay, it's good to know that, because then I will focus Pareto. I'll think Pareto, and I will try and focus on those 20% that really perform, and we'll make sure that they will perform better. And if I get anything from the remaining of the population of contributors, it's just going to, I'll collect that, but I will not be concerned about those. I will focus on, focus my effort in making sure that those that are going to be my contributors really contribute well. This may work for some types of activities that you plan. It will probably not be enough if you want collective intelligence for citizenship, for example, right? Or at least it may work for some of your projects. For example, in our case, I believe that Valmir's work on finding the better ways for people on wheelchairs to move around the city, I believe that it doesn't matter if only 20% of the possible contributors contribute, if those 20% do the work to make sure that we have the maps we need for, to solve the problem. So it is a project that is concerned with citizenship, but it's not a project to necessarily develop citizenship, right? If you want to develop citizenship, you don't want to develop citizenship in 20% of the population and leave the remaining aside, because that's not a democratic principle for citizenship, right? So, but anyway, it's for me it is curious that Pareto appeared here in this paragraph here. And Pareto also appeared this concern about, or at least this, it's not a concern in their case, it's just they just noticed that there are super users, or as they call here, power users, or as Teodoro and friends call here, super agents that will perform most of the task. And it would be important that we are aware of that if we want to profit from it, okay? And then the three questions that Carlos was talking about appear here. The key research questions addressed in the study are thus: what are the main motivations for joining on-demand mobile workforce services? What are the main motivations for selecting certain tasks over others? Notice, we're trying to understand, again, because we want, as developers of collective intelligence projects, we want to know which buttons to push so that people do what we want, right? And what task characteristics did workers find more or less enjoyable and worthwhile? One interesting thing is that, well, they drive this, they build this figure 1 categorization of on-demand work for services, and they show that depending on if the task is more virtual or physical, or if it's more complex or simple, there are already platforms that have specialized on dealing in each one of these quadrants here, okay? Of course, as this paper is about physical tasks, I think it would be much easier if they just called it physical tasks and not mobile tasks, right? But anyway, maybe that's one of the tug of wars that we'll have to do. We call it physical tasks, they call it mobile tasks, and in 10 years' time we see who wins the battle and who defines the way it is going to be called one day, right? But anyway, and notice that here, the authors found out, well, they actually, the two platforms that they study are TaskRabbit and GigWalk. These two platforms are concerned, they're concerned with geography. They realize that the tasks that are assigned through those platforms depend on people being close to the task that needs to be performed, so they're physical tasks. But there's a difference between the two of them that will be interesting for the results that they get afterwards, right? TaskRabbit is usually concerned with more complex tasks. And GigWalk relates more to simpler tasks. What are, let's say, what do the authors consider or more complex tasks? For example, anything related to helping a neighbor. Why is it complex, more complex? Well, it's not, it usually takes a little more time. Well, it involves a human involvement, interaction with someone else. It becomes complex even because, as we will see in the other paper later, you may have even some concerns about safety or security, right? You're not going to perform a task that involves human contact if you don't have some level of trust that you're not putting yourself in danger, for example. Right? We live in a paranoid society that, these papers are not Brazilian papers. I was talking that even when I send my students to signal things around or to mark whatever details about our sidewalks around UTFPR, I asked them to go in groups of 2 or 3 because I didn't want any one of them stolen. But this is not just an issue in Brazil. This is an issue maybe of mankind. Not everyone is nice, and you don't want to put yourself at risk. Mainly if the let's say the reward is little. People take higher risks if there is a larger reward. But if for a few bucks or for glory or love, People may refuse. So TaskRabbit, one of the differences between TaskRabbit and GigWalk is that TaskRabbit requires more, well, it first requires more information on the people that are selling and well, are performing the task and the people that asked for the task to be performed, right? GigWalk doesn't require anything or requires much less. So that already makes people feel a little more secure with TaskRabbit than GigWalk. And then, but again, what are those complex tasks? For example, helping someone, I'm saying a neighbor, but it's not someone that you know, not your next door neighbor, but a neighbor, someone that lives in the vicinity, to assemble, for example, furniture that they bought at IKEA. Right? Deliveries. Why is delivery more? We may not think of that as a complex task, but you have to go somewhere, pick something, and take it to some other place. Maybe you say, okay, that's not complex, but then you have to meet the person to, there's again, they're more complex than the tasks that GigWalk, that people will do for GigWalk. House chores, house cleaning, for example, right? Someone needs someone to go and clean their house or take care of a pet while they're traveling. It's a more complex task than the ones that people do for GigWalk. For example, price checks. Go to the local supermarket and get the price of I don't know, lettuce, because there is someone who hired GigWalks that is doing a survey to show prices of vegetables in different supermarkets in the city, for example. It's a task that if you live a few blocks away, or even if you live far from that supermarket, but you go there, often you would be happy to perform. But this is a simple task. No involvement with anyone else, just going there, checking something, right? Store audits. Go to a store and check whatever they want you to check. If it's clean, even if they have good service, you go there. Notice it's different. It's less complex in the sense anyone goes into a shop and and whatever interaction you have to someone. The difference between the interaction I said there is some human interaction, but it's a transactional human interaction, right? You're going there and doing exactly what everyone does there. You will, let's say, have a meal at a restaurant and well, there's already a cost for you, right? But still, if they ask you to make a review on a restaurant where you usually eat, then they will not have to pay for your meal, right? And there's no additional human involvement. There's no additional issues here that would make this task more complex. Field photography, right? It's a lot of use of photography for whatever reason, and usually they just need you to go there and take a picture, for example, of a sign. Think of, for example, an insurance company that wants to claim that maybe wants to sue the mayor of a city because a car crash was caused because of problems in signaling. But the company has its head offices in São Paulo, and their customer was here in Curitiba. They want someone to go there and take a few pictures of a corner or something to show that it's not well signaled for whatever reason. This is going to, it's a very simple task that could be performed by someone who lives nearby or who goes through that place for little or no money, okay, or no compensation. I noticed that, I'm not sure now if it's this paper. No, it's the other paper. Just have to very quickly go to that because they're also talking about GigWalk. Yeah, it's the other paper, but when they say, for example, is there a difference between taking a picture of a sign at an intersection and taking a picture of a tree? for you, do you think that there's a difference in motivation? Someone says, go and take a picture of a sign that is in the corner of 7 Setembro Avenue and Marechal Floriano Street. Okay, it's an ugly concrete area, boring task. You go there. Now take a picture of a leaf or the trunk of a tree, even in your block or whatever. Just this, the fact that you're now mentioning nature, it's still in the middle of all the concrete of a city, but you're probably you already have a different feeling to that. So notice how we are influenced by, we could be influenced by very psychological reasons. We are still in the middle of a concrete city, a city, made of concrete, but you say photograph a traffic sign, it's a boring, very pragmatic task. Photograph the leaf of a tree, and it's a more romantic task, or more, it takes you out of your daily routine or whatever. And that means that maybe the compensation or the reward for one and the other could be different. But there's a lot of fine-tuning to be done in deciding how to motivate people, and we are still a long way from having good solutions for this. In fact, maybe we could even use, to decide on the value of any of this work, we could use some Web 3.0 approach, and I'm only considering one of the possibilities of Web 3.0, that is, okay, we have the collective intelligence to perform the tasks, but we also have now the collective intelligence of those who will assess those tasks and see how much those tasks are valued. See, another layer of collective intelligence that is already around. For example, Amazon asks customers to write comments and assess products that they sell, and then they ask the customers that read those comments and assessments to say if they liked those, if those comments were important to them or not. Notice it's a second layer of involvement of the collectives. That could be one of the, maybe that's one of, some authors say that this is Web 3.0. Others say that Web 3.0 is just the tagging, which is again a second layer of collective intelligence, but the collectives tagging what other members of the collective did. Maybe the two things are not very different. It's a second layer of collective intelligence. Collective intelligence to check and make sure that the first layer of collective intelligence is doing a good job. Right?
Meta-collective intelligence.
Pardon? Meta collective intelligence. Good term. Maybe that's going to be, maybe you write a paper on that, and you will be in the future. We'll have that as one of the terms that we use to describe something that I'm finding difficult to say here. Whenever someone talks about meta-collective intelligence, it is the collective intelligence of the collective intelligence. Right. Copyright that. Okay. It's weird having the paper here on screen and also in my hands in the old-fashioned way here. But anyway, I still prefer to mark things on paper. The paper also talks here about, starts talking about overall motivations that the authors already found in the literature, and showing us that motivation has and is being studied in psychology. I think you already read something by Woolley. Woolley worked with Thomas Malone with the factor C, and she's a psychologist. Economic theory, so a few authors here talking about motivations from an economic perspective. Of course, if you're talking from an economic perspective, chances are that you're more attached to the old ways of rewarding. If you're talking about psychology, chances are you're thinking of the new ways. I'm saying here the old ways, paying, money, and the new ways, which are not necessarily new, but they were not as emphasized. They have not been emphasized by most organizations during the last few centuries, being love and glory. Then there is some discussion of extrinsic and intrinsic motivations. Basically, extrinsic motivations are those that come from outside, and intrinsic motivations are motivations that we have on our own. Again, there's a trend, at least, there's a chance that extrinsic motivations will be more related to money and maybe glory, and intrinsic motivations will be those more related to your personal values, altruism, and so on and so forth. So I don't think, for example, that anyone would do anything for, or would perform the regular tasks that appear at Mechanical Turk, for example, for intrinsic motivation. Mechanical Turk is, in fact, if we go back to their model here in the previous page, probably these tasks considered as simple tasks here are tasks that are not very attractive, or that are not very related to intrinsic motivations, right? And notice that maybe it's not necessarily here. Notice it's difficult. It's any model is an oversimplification of reality. I've already said that it's different for you, for a person to take a picture of a traffic sign and a leaf and a tree leaf. And I'm not saying that taking a photograph of a tree leaf is more complex than photographing a sign, but I would say that probably there's a trend. It's probably tasks being performed for Mechanical Turk or Gig Walk will be a little more related to pragmatic benefits. And maybe tasks that will be posted in more complex tasks, you will have other reasons as well to collaborate, right? I'm not sure if that's going to happen in all cases, but let's say that you may feel happier about helping a neighbor. Notice that a neighbor, it doesn't need to be a neighbor that you know, someone who has the same sort of problems that you have, let's say, and go and feed the neighbor's dog for a week while the neighbor is traveling. You may do that expecting that someone will do it, and you may do that for free, expecting that someone, not necessarily the same person, but someone will want to do that for free for you in the future, or will do that just to get the thank you from the person at the end, right? Then photographing the numbers of the houses in your street, for example. And mainly photographing the numbers of the houses in your street for a company that is demanding that on Mechanical Turk. If it was photographing the numbers of the houses in your in your streets to help in a social project, you would do that for free. So maybe it's not so related to simple or complex, but no, yeah, but yeah. But anyway, I hope you understood what I'm trying to say here. We have to build other models as well that try to explain things that the models that we already have don't. What else? So there's a lot here about people even trying to kill their time, in some cases, and they talk a little about the theory of planned behavior. This is a theory in in psychology, that has had a lot of use already in information systems. When we, for example, most of the theory that we have on the adoption and acceptance of information systems in organizations is based on this theory of planned behavior. And the theory of planned behavior basically tries to anticipate how your perceptions about the world will turn into your behavior, and how your behavior will turn into the actual use of or your actual performance, right? So I think that there is definitely some room for this kind of discussion here from a psychological, from a psychology perspective, right? We can anticipate how people will act depending on the way the person perceives something. So, and going back to my example of the traffic sign and the tree leaf, we could, and it is a psychological thing, but we could anticipate how people will act or react to a posting for this based on this kind of theories, right? Well, then one interesting thing is, again, we've already discussed a little bit the differences between TaskRabbit and GigWalk. But the authors summarize it here. They say TaskRabbit and GigWalk facilitate physical world tasks. Both of them do that, but differ in terms of typical task complexity. Not only typical task complexity, but also task assignments and worker application process and worker profiles. TaskRabbit tasks are usually personal requests from nearby individuals. Notice this is interesting. Maybe more than complex and simple, TaskRabbit is people hiring people. People asking for chores that other people will do for them. So it's different to relate to another citizen or to another person than it is to relate to a company, right? When you relate to a company, you already set your mind to the traditional ways companies work. How much are you going to pay me for that? But if it's a neighbor, you may think, well, I understand why this person has this problem now. I will help this person solve the problem because I may be in the same situation in the future, and I hope that someone is nice to me. Notice, you're not doing that. You're not going to ask, how much are you paying me for that? We do that quite often also because we became, as I said before, we become what we develop, right? We developed capitalism, we developed the way we structured our economy, and now our economy develops the way we think, right? So I'm not saying that you're not going to think, how much are you paying me for that? But it's not necessarily the only way to go. And it may, depending on even how you, there's another paper that in which we'll discuss what makes people answer to questions that are made in Yahoo. And one of the reasons is, well, it depends on how the question was formulated. So depending on how you formulate your problem, you may have people willing to help for love, and that precisely the same thing may, in other, if formulated in a different way, require money. Okay. So TaskRabbit tasks are usually personal requests from nearby individuals, while gigs are usually generic requests from companies who need product or display checks among several distributed locations. Right? Well, then they talk about the different types of rewards, money compensation. It appeared in many cases, I do it for the money. that? They say here that while some workers appreciated not having to coordinate payments awkwardly in person or worry about never getting paid, this was one of the advantages of using these services, because they were paid by the platform, not having to directly. Most workers expressed a desire for more payment regulation. So they're probably saying, well, it's good that I don't have to deal directly with whoever is on the other side of the trades. So the platform takes care of that. But at the same time, I feel weak. I feel that I don't have enough power to require, let's say, the fair payment, and I would expect that government somehow intervened on that. This is my reading of this.
But there are some people telling that when they use the AMT,
Uh-huh.
having a church, sometimes they are not got.
They didn't get paid. Uh-huh. Yeah.
Because they have to review their work, and sometimes they don't. They,
Mhm.
they just don't pay.
Yeah, probably one of the things that may happen there is, and this is a challenge also, it's not just motivation for people to help you. You need to motivate them to do what you need, and at the same time you would like to get people that do it accordingly, right? The more you base rewards on money, the more chances you'll have people doing that for their own pragmatic reasons, and there is no direct alignment in this is something important, and people don't feel part of what they're doing. They're doing it for the money. So it's that thing. I do it for the money, and of course there will be people that will do it for the money, but will still say I'll do it fairly for the money, and there will be people that will say these guys are exploring me. They're paying too little, so I'll try to explore them back, right? And Mechanical Turk has put some tools to try and stop or prevent. I wouldn't call this sabotage, because it's not necessary. The intention is not sabotaging their system, but they try to prevent that people use their platform in a way to get the compensation or get the reward without performing the task to the expected quality standards, right? So I think that's the complaint. And in fact, they say there is, now I don't remember if it's this paper or the other that says, that even say that there are differences in gender, right? And when they talk about differences in gender, they say men cheat more than women. It's the other paper. I don't know, I'm not a cheater. But anyway, they have hard evidence for their argument, and maybe my explanation for that would be men were more affected by the values of the Industrial Revolution. Right? Men carried out the Industrial Revolution, and so men will do things more for money probably, and I don't think that we are hardwired to do that. It's just the way that we socially built our society until now, and I think we're changing. But I would say men are probably more pragmatic. Will do for money things that women would probably do for love, not even for glory, right? Men will do for money and for glory, and considering that glory could convert into money as well. Okay? So there's different, and then if you're doing for money, you're closer to doing things that are not completely aligned to the way you think, because it's an exchange, right? I do that. It's almost like you're harming me. You know, you're imposing me something, and I'm imposing a compensation for that. That is the money. Love doesn't go that way. You don't do something for love expecting something in exchange in the same amount or even at a larger amount, right? When you do something for money, the logic of, I'm not sure if it's the logic of the Industrial Revolution specifically, but it's the logic of the capitalism we built so far is it's all of about an exchange, and it's an exchange where if someone wins, the other one loses, right? It's not definitely not a gain-gain situation. Right? All right. So then when they talk about the motivations for selecting the mobile workforce tasks, there are the first ones here are situational factors. And notice they're very important in these kinds of tasks, these micro tasks in which you require a mobile workforce, which means you require where geography is important. These situational factors may involve the fact that you're close to that place or that you go to that place often, and this may be more important than some other factors that could also be involved. Physical location and the worker's evaluation of the task requested profile, the task requester profile. And remember, here they say rabbit, what is it? What's the name of the company? Rabbit, TaskRabbit asks for much more information than GigWalk. Therefore, if you think that that's important to assess the requester's profile, then maybe it's going to be important. That thing is going to be important. Then they go on talking about each one of them, the situational factors, the convenience of the physical location, the evaluation of the task requester. It's interesting that they say here, photo is important, picture is important. I have to agree with that. I say some of you haven't included a photograph in your Moodle, in the Moodle platform yet, but that's important for other people that are relating there, right? You are all seeing each other, but someone who's doing this from somewhere else, they're interacting with your words. It's good to see your face, right? So it's not a matter only of, well, I'm deciding here on my my security, and I see that the photo is of someone with a tattoo here, a big tattoo here, and a scar. And then I say, well, this is a dangerous person. I'm not saying that, but it's just a matter of increasing that level of personal engagement in the task that may be important, mainly in those situations where money is not going to be the main issue. Sort of lost here. Let me see where I am. They talk about some considerations of the task. I think the task to be performed. I'm not sure if I'm not sure where I am now. The paper doesn't have numbers in the pages here. I'll have to find myself here. Considerations for task characteristics. Consideration for task characteristics. So there are people that say, well, they want to know how memorable those experiences were. Again, there are some tasks that you just find that the task is fun for the task, or the values involved are interesting. Again, I don't know if it's here that they talk. Oh yeah, it's no. I'm not sure if it's here. The one that someone had requested someone to buy flowers and take to the couple that were, meeting on a bridge or something. Someone may just really, I wished I had gotten flowers that way, and they will do it. for reasons that are not pragmatic. I'm not sure if it's here that I saw that. Is it? Yeah. You notice that these papers, although I say that they even use different vocabulary and everything, they at least they go in the same way. Right? So many times it's people find important getting to know the person behind the task. Few years, a couple of years ago, I had one of my undergraduate students that was involved in a crowdfunding project. And he found that the most important part of the crowdfunding, which by the way was not successful at the end, but anyway, he still he was doing that as he intended to build to develop a game, and then he was trying to get sponsorship from people that would use the game afterwards. It turned out that he was not able to raise the money that he needed for the game to be as sophisticated as he wished it was. But anyway, one of the things he noticed was that the campaign got much more impactful when he recorded a video saying, "Look, I am the guy who's doing this, and I've always wanted to develop a game like this." So he was, well, not emotional about it, but he was telling people about the reasons why he had thought of that and why that was a dream and whatever. And he knows, although the campaign turned out not to be successful, which shows that people say, "Oh, it's crowdfunding is easy." You just no, it's not. It's not easy because we all have scarce resources, and we may fund projects that we find interesting, but there's going to we'll probably need to be really connected or related to that, at least in very we don't need to know the person or know the but we have to have something to say, well, this is worth helping, even if I'm not going to have any direct benefit from it. And it's each time more difficult. Maybe 10 years ago it was easier to do crowdfunding when you had never seen a crowdfunding campaign and you thought that you could contribute just for how interesting it was. But now that there is a crowdfunding campaign, every time you open your email, you definitely have to be much more selective. But anyway, knowing the people behind the task could be important. In this case, it's just knowing the people behind the task. But I'm saying, even in your projects, if you think of a collective intelligence project, knowing the people behind the project, the reasons for that project, right? Mainly if those reasons are reasons that you think that would be considered good and important reasons by other people, that will definitely help getting the support you need. So don't underestimate that. Also some moral implications. So workers sometimes questions the intentions and moral implications of job postings. Of course, some job postings may not, we expect them not to be illegal, but for example, when a company tries to hire people to go and pretend that they're customers of their competitors to get to do some benchmarking, or some people may say, well, I don't feel that that's very good. Or even if some companies hire someone to go there and visit their own shops and to investigate how their employees are doing, this is also, you're going to say, well, in Portuguese we have that word dedo duro, né? They're hiring me to go there and do a nasty job. I don't want that, right? There's nothing illegal about that, and I think it's even, we could think exactly the opposite way. We could think, well, this is a company that is interested in providing good service to customers, and they are willing to assess how they're doing. And then therefore it depends on how you think about and maybe it could even be it could depend on the way they express themselves and how you feel that and the feeling that you have about their intentions. Is their intention to improve their work by better training their workers, if we're thinking about their own sellers in a shop, for example, or is their intention to fire workers that they don't like? And so depending on your perception, see again why the psychology, the planned behavior theory could be interesting, or any psychology related theory could be interesting to see how will people relate to my postings. So then socializing, so getting and here one other interesting thing about TaskRabbit and GigWalk, talking about again the differences that are found between the two platforms. TaskRabbit and GigWalk workers differed in their general impression on the requester and their intentions for learning more about the requesters. In TaskRabbit, participants were generally very positive about the task posters and had few negative experiences to share. Several TaskRabbits described the experience of completing tasks similar to helping a friend or helping a neighbor. Right? Notice, helping a friend or helping a neighbor is something that I do for completely different reasons than helping a company, particularly if it's a company that I'm not very aligned with in terms of principles. And again, notice most of the differences that they found here were actually differences that were already in the DNA of the platforms, it seems. I'm not familiar with TaskRabbit or GigWalk myself, but the impression I have from what they say here, the platform already invites some types of tasks that is that has more to do with the general way that platform goes. We have here, for example, again, unlike TaskRabbit, GigWalkers assume that requesters were companies. No, they assumed that, right? They didn't even know, because many times it's not said who's asking for them. But they assumed that they were companies checking in on their own employees and products, right? And they probably thought, if the company that I work for was doing that about me, I wouldn't feel very well. So I don't want to be involved. In fact, those GigWalkers that did express desires to learn about the persons and story behind the tasks did so because they questioned the legitimacy of the requesters and ethical nature of the tasks themselves. Then there is some talk here about the definition of the job experience. There are tasks that provide experience or learned skills. Sometimes you do a task because you're learning with it. So you find that you don't need to be paid because it is, you're gaining already something. In fact, yesterday I saw this, it was not an ad, it was actually a report on radio on this English school that now provides their students with an experience to talk to people in retirement houses in the United States. And well, they were doing that. Of course, there is money involved, because there's money involved in the sense that the company, this English school, is charging their students to be their students. But it's providing them with this opportunity to talk to someone in a retirement home in the United States or Canada, in an English-speaking country. But what they noticed is that there was gain for both ends. You know, their students here would have a possibility of practice their English with someone there, and there are people that spend most of their time without doing nothing, wishing that someone visits them and so on, and now have the opportunity of. So this is one of those clever ways of using. It's not exactly collective intelligence, because it's a smaller thing, but it could be more, depending on how you develop that. That could even involve collective intelligence. But the idea was aligning the needs of people that are in different stages of their lives and with different goals. And in fact, from what they were saying there, this project has brought a lot of benefit for some of those. Pardon? Okay. I remember, I just didn't want to say which one it was. But anyway, but I thought it was, at least, it's a clever way. We don't, I mean, I'm not saying that we should necessarily give up the pragmatic perspectives of the Industrial Revolution. I don't think that we can, possibly, right? But I'm saying that there are probably clever ways of doing that in which everyone benefits, okay? And no one feels exploited. Depending on how depending on how much they stress that, someone may feel exploited. So you have to be even careful of how to do things, and definitely show that everyone involved is happy with what is happening, because otherwise someone may be thinking, oh, the school is cheating those old ladies, and they're not paying them anything, and they're you know. So we also have to be careful about these things. It's okay if we involve people this way, but we will probably have to also make sure that the people themselves feel that that's something that they want to do, and we'll probably have to make sure that we are able to show this to others as well, because there's always someone who's going to be a little concerned and saying, aren't those people being exploited, right? At whatever ends. Students here are being charged, and then they're not being, I don't think that they're being charged specifically for that conversation. It's not like a class that the school is charging and not paying at the other end. They present it as an additional possibility. So they're actually, for me it seems okay, but I said there will be people that will be raising issues, and it would be good if we are developing projects where people will be building issues. It's better that we plan ahead and make sure that we show that things are not the way that they're thinking. Okay? What else? Then the main motivators here. The main motivations for joining on-demand mobile workforce, this is already some of the results, involve desire for monetary compensation and personal control over one's schedule and freedom to opt into or out of tasks. Notice, this is interesting. People are valuing their freedom. So they're not unhappy about the fact that many times they're underpaid. They say, okay, I realize that I'm underpaid, that they're not. If I was their employee, they would be paying me more for that. But I value my freedom. I do this when I like. If I want, I do it. If I don't, I just refuse it. So this is something that is suits much better, at least the perception I have of my children's generation, than my own. Right? My generation would probably be less concerned with personal control over their own lives and say, okay, I realize that I don't have control of my life, but they're paying me to compensate me for that, let's say. And these younger kids, they're saying, well, I do things that I think that are worth doing. Other things, I prefer to refuse things, even if that means that I will, let's say, not have the same safety as previous generations wanted to have. And maybe they become safer by the network itself gives them this feeling that they're safer because they belong to a network where there's always some little core, some little task to be made if someone is hungry or when someone is hungry, right? There is no need for accumulation as there was in the past. I wouldn't say that my generation is a greedy generation that wanted to accumulate, but accumulation was one way of responding to the risks of life. Right? It seems that they perceive those risks at a lesser extent than we did.
I was thinking about the question on this paper, and
which one of them? The three questions that they posed at the beginning?
No. Something else about the mechanical Turk. Isn't the quality of the job you do related with if you're doing for love or if you're doing for money? Is there a relation between
the quality?
Yeah.
I don't know. They what they notice here is that when you do it for money, there is a risk, a larger risk for poor quality if there is no control over that. Because it would be easy for, if Mechanical Turk just said, well, go to, I don't know, do whatever task, and you notice that if regardless of how you do it, they will pay. And if your mindset is, I want to be paid, not I want to fulfill, to develop something that I value, I'm doing that for the money, there is a larger risk that you will cheat, let's say, right? So they don't have, I'm not sure if they had empirical evidence of that, but it's a question that they raise, right? And in fact, I think this is something that we could, at least it would be already conceivable that if someone is going to do something for love, they will do at least their best. Maybe their best is still very poor, right? This could also happen. You know, their best is still not okay.
Maybe
so
because
they lack the skills. Exactly. There's. But let's say their intention is to, let's say, when you do something for love, your intentions are well aligned. Do you understand that? I mean, if I'm doing something for love, it's because I have identified myself with the cause. And then I will put my best effort to that. Because I believe on the cause. I believe that that's something important. If I'm doing it for money, well, it will depend. There will be people that, there will be people that will not, let's say, I think although I'm a mercenary, no, I'm not a mercenary. Although I work for money, I hope I only do things that I like to do, right? And I don't, and I feel, well, professors are in a good position in that way. We have this possibility of doing what we want all the time. Right? In fact, we just have to pretend we do things that people want us to do, but then we do whatever we want. Right? We have a lot of freedom in what we do. I keep telling my students that if I want to pretend that I'm working instead of working, I probably can pretend for another 5 or 10 years before someone starts thinking, is he working or is he just pretending? Right? What we do is so at the soft side of the world, right? Ideas. It's difficult to measure the very tangible ways that the Industrial Revolution has measured everything until now. Right? I think the world is getting more complex. The world is getting more like university. It's each time more difficult to know if what people are doing is to measure what people are doing in organizations. As tasks become more complex, as people need to decide what they're doing and not just perform something that someone has already pre-arranged for them, this all makes the rest of the world more similar to what has ever happened in university. So I think that even the traditional organizations of the future will need to be more like the university. They will either they will have to give people more freedom they will have to check for alignment. First, they will have to make sure that their workers believe in what they're doing, and that what the company does is important. And then that's what they probably have to check. And then they will have to hope that those people are competent enough to do something that helps those objectives, those aligned objectives, to happen. I think even in traditional organizations, we will have to work more for love than for money in the future, because otherwise we will work for money during the day, and then we will work for love after a job to ruin what we did there, right? So I don't believe that, so now I'll counteract here. So and then notice we will all be cheating. I think we already have this feeling, hopefully and fortunately, in university. I don't think that, at least I don't have the feeling that I'm cheating because I have freedom. But when I don't, even in the university, when I don't have freedom, I have the feeling that I'm cheating. For example, I shouldn't say this in being recorded, but we've just, one of these Tribunal de Contas, I think, has just demanded that all professors have their timetable with all the times that they're teaching a class and all the times that they are doing some other activity posted, and it's going to be in the transparency portal or whatever from the university. To some extent, I think it's good that we have we try to have this transparency, but at the same time I say, gee, I'm not here, I'm sure that I'm not here at the university 40 hours a week. But at the same time, I'm sure that I work for this university more than 40 hours a week. So if now, and this will probably, well, for now I'm sort of lying. That's my timetable. There are the times that I'm in class. Those times I'm definitely in class. There are the times that it says there, well, I'm here. At these times I'm definitely in my office because a student may need to talk to me. So those are times that I'm already there. And there's a lot of other times that we have as permanencia, which means, think if that's something reasonable in a knowledge society. It's time that I have to be sitting there, well, doing what I, possibly assuming that I have doing what I have to do, preparing my classes, writing papers or whatever, but it has to be there because Tribunal de Contas wants that. The problem is I can't work from here, I can't write a paper from my office. I share it with two other lecturers, another professor. There are students there all the time. It doesn't work for me. And besides, I work well on. I like maybe I like that. What is the thing about the control? I like controlling my own time, right? And I like knowing that maybe I will, well, this afternoon after my classes, although I have to be there until 6 o'clock I like the idea that if I want to leave there at 4, after I finish my class in the afternoon, that there's no boss saying, Alex, where did you go? Because then tomorrow morning, I can work again, right? I think, again, university professors are more, I'm not very different to my daughter in that sense. And maybe when I say that my generation wished a career, right? And the fact that the career in academia is pretty much like what the young people want today, or at least was before this transparency thing.
I would say that it depends on what place in the level of change in the company you are. For
Exactly. Yeah.
I
It depends.
agree with you
Yeah.
that
Sure. Even because but in the industrial world, sellers can be assessed that way. Oh, I don't. The seller doesn't have to go there and work 40 hours in the company, because if they do that, they're not visiting the customers, right? To start with, and besides, it's very easy to measure. Well, it's easy to measure how much they sold at the end of the month, and the president is not crazy to dismiss someone who's the best seller of the company. In fact, there are many times that the president earns less than the seller. That's a common situation in organizations, and the president is going to be very happy because he has a salary, or he has a profit if he's one of the owners of the company, because that guy is selling, right? But notice that the seller is still an Industrial Revolution employee, because it's easy to measure. The problem is, it's the problem, and the more common situation that we have now in the 21st century is that most workers are going to be information workers, and what we do is not easily measurable. And if you measure it easily, you're measuring the wrong things, right? So I'm not saying that Tribunal de Contas is wrong of trying to know what we are doing, but what I'm saying, and I'm not complaining either, because I even think that maybe if they're doing this, it's because there are probably problems somewhere. What I can assure is that most of us do work more hours, mainly because we prefer to have less control. And that also happens, for example, with a manager in a company. The first thing that managers stop having to do is to tell exactly the precise time they get in and get out of because they're working in the evenings as well. Their weekends are thinking,
we need KPIs.
why?
The companies need KPIs to control the results, and we can.
I teach.
KPIs not with appointing.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
can,
I teach that, but I don't believe that, right? I have to make that clear. KPIs, the key performance indicators, they usually measure something that the boss gets happy about, and that, of course, the worker, knowing that he or she is going to be assessed by that he will look good at the picture. But that doesn't provide for alignment between the intentions of a person and the intentions of an organization. I think there is a huge problem today is that most of our organizations have objectives that we would not want to be aligned with. Right? This is a good problem and a challenge for organizations if they want to keep meaningful in the future. Otherwise, we will start doing everything for love, right? And getting, I'm saying for what I see my kids doing. I'm not saying. In fact, I say yes. That's what you have to do, right? Do something that you feel that you will feel good about, right? Don't get a job because it pays well, and then you feel that you're a jerk, doing things that you do not agree with, because that is going to put you down, right? It's better to do what you feel that you should be doing, even if you're not acknowledged in the old ways. So what I'm saying, Carlos, of course, let's not make this a huge, let's not polemize about this, because of course we can't change, we can't move ahead if we don't assess what we do. But it's much more important, it will be much more important in the future to go in the right direction than to go fast in a direction that makes no sense. And I think that many times KPIs just help us do faster what we shouldn't be doing, because they are still focused on a way of and on something that is the past. But I don't know. I don't want to polemize too much on that. It could even be that the KPIs that are in your mind are different to the KPIs that I've seen companies using around, right? Hopefully there are companies that have a better understanding of how things should be. But what I'm saying is, notice that there's a huge potential for love in the future here. You know, because people will not have to work 40 hours a week to participate in meaningful and even in large projects, right? They can share little of their time and together with others build things that could make the lives of the whole community much better. There is a lot of potential, although I'm many times critical about the way our connected society is going with respect to privacy and even the goals that I see being played there. But I think this is all also part of a period of realizing that we can build a society that is much different to that. We can have the benefits of swarm intelligence. We can be part of the swarm part of the time, and we can be completely free other times. It's times that it's convenient to just do a little part of the share, so that we to ensure, let's say, that we have food, for example, and then there is from then on we have plenty of time to develop projects in which, by making sure that everyone is aligned with that project, that people agree with the concept, that we don't even have to measure their performance, right? We measure the performance of the project itself, but not the performance of each person. Also because we're all different anyway. Why, if we're all different, if I'm more capable of helping more now and someone else is going to be more capable of helping a little later, why should I be, emphasize now and put that person to the side now? Remember, each one of us knows something that is important to all of us. It's a matter of just knowing the time where that knowledge that we have is the important knowledge. Gee, it's more than 10 o'clock. I think I overdid this, and we're still in the first one. But I think we got the message. And again, if we go back just to summarize this paper, can't see. See my, this is it. We could go back there to our abstract and just check the results to which they got. The analysis revealed that the main drivers for participating in an online mobile workforce, including desires for monetary compensation and control over schedules and task selection. Notice, they are concerned about the monetary compensation, because we've been concerned about money for too long to forget about it, right? We're not going to forget it too soon. But at the same time, notice here, this is very important. Control over schedules and task selection. People want that, and they're even willing to sacrifice part of the money compensation so that they are the bosses of themselves, in the sense that they do it when it pleases them, okay? We also review main reasons for task selection, which involve situational factors, convenient physical locations, and task requester profile information. So if all these things are important, we should think of them when building our own projects. And finally, we discussed the key characteristics of the most worthwhile tasks and offer implications for novel crowdsourcing systems for physical world tasks. This is what we usually call the future work, right? And when we conclude an academic paper, we tend to have, after we show that we got the results that we were expecting, or at least that we got results for the questions, the research questions we had, we should also say where we are going from now, right? That's the future work. So this was the first paper here, the motivations and experiences of the on-demand mobile workforce. maybe we should do this a little different today. Maybe stop now for a quick break, some 15 minutes, and then we'll come back and let's continue in this more theoretical way today. And you just have to promise me that, considering that you have a holiday on Tuesday, and that in Brazil we always, Monday is for sure part of the holiday, then that you use some of that time to participate in the forum and include your ideas about the papers that we discussed today. But I don't want to rush over the other papers, so let's do okay? So let's go for a 15-minute break, and then we'll be back.